This is for Algebra 2, and we're going to talk about fraction powers today. The rule for converting to fractional and radical notation: the numerator is the exponent and the denominator is the root. In other words, if you have anything with a fraction for your exponent, you're going to have to rewrite it as a root. The numerator stays a numerator, it stays an exponent, and the denominator tells what root you're talking about. So in this example that they had, x to the 2/3 became the cubed root of x squared. If you look at number 1, you have 2 to the 1/2. So you know there's going to be a root. Your root is the denominator, which is 2. So that's the square root. It's just commonly accepted that if you don't have a root written here, it's square. So you could put a 2 here if you just really wanted to, but it's not necessary. So it's going to be the square root of 2, because that was my base, to the first. Once again, you could put the 1, but it's not really necessary. So 3 to the 1/2 is the square root of 3, because 2 tells me square root, 1 is an exponent that does not have to be written. 9 to the 1/2 is the square root of 9. Now you need to notice something different about this one. 9 is actually a perfect square. When that happens, it's best to go ahead and reduce it. And so this would just become 3. It actually becomes plus or minus 3. 25 to the 1/2 is like saying the square root of 25. This is also a perfect square, and it becomes plus or minus 5. 7 to the 1/3, okay, so now it's not a square root, it's a cubed root. The bottom one is your root, so you got to put a 3 here. 7 to the 1st. 15 to the 1/4 is the 4th root of 15. Now, actually, you also need to be checking as you do this and make sure that you couldn't reduce it, you couldn't factor tree it. So far, we haven't had one that would. X to the 1/2 is the square root of x. Y to the 1/5 is the 5th root of y. A to the 2/2, well, realize that it reduces, and that's just a. 9a to the 1/2, notice your 9a in parentheses, all of that is your base. Therefore, all of that goes inside your radical. So it's the square root of 9a. 16x to the 5th, all to the 1/2, is the square root of 16x to the 5th. Now, you need to look and realize that the square root of 16 is 4. Okay? So plus or minus 4. Now, the square root of x to the 5th. What you need to do to reduce that is you're going to take the numerator inside, which was 5, divided by 2, because it was the square root. Okay? And that is 2 with the remainder of 1. If you're not sure about that, old school division. 2 will go into 5, 2. 2 times 2 is 4 with the remainder of 1. What you have on the top is what comes out. So this is actually going to be x squared on the outside to the square root of. The remainder stays inside. So this would be x to the 1st on the inside. Okay, that one's a little bit trickier. Let me make up a problem. You don't have to write this one down, but just to kind of look. If we had, let's say we had the cubed root of x to the 10th. You would say 10 divided by 3 because it was the cubed root. Okay, or if you wanted to do it old school division, 10 divided by 3, it'll go into it 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. So it's 3 remainder of 1. So you would pull out x to the 3rd, and inside the cubed root there would be x. Okay, so you've got x to the 3rd cubed root of x. Moving to the bottom, we're going to do the opposite. Instead of having a root, we're going to make it a fraction. Your base is whatever was inside. So 7 to the, there's no exponent in here, so that would be 1 over square root is 2, 7 to the 1/2. 6 is your base to the 1/2. 8 is your base. It's to the 1/4 because that's what the root was. The root is your denominator. The 5th root of 18, 18 is your base to the 1/5. Cubed root of 2, 2 is your base to the 1/3. And 2 times the 4th root of 15. So this would be 2 times 15 to the 1/4. Going to the next page. Remember that if you raise a power to a power, you multiply, and this would become x to the a plus b, a times b, or x to the ab. When you multiply, you actually add your exponents, and this becomes x to the a plus b. So they've basically just written your answers over here for you. Okay, so there's nothing to do on that. So write in simplest radical form using only one radical sign. So this is 3 to the 2/3, okay? So you would think of that as being 3 is your base, your numerator is your exponent, so 2, and it's the cubed root. And then we have a to the 1/3. But you only want one radical sign. Well, they're both to the 3rd power, so it's the cubed root of 3 squared a. Probably what would look best is if you went ahead and took care of that 3 squared and made this the cubed root of 9a. So looking at number 22, they're all the 9th root, okay? So we've got the 9th root of 4, because it's 4 to the 1st, x squared, because it's x to the 2/9, and y to the 4th, because it was 4/9. And that's your answer. Let's skip over here and do these smaller numbered ones because they're going to be a little easier. And then we'll come back and get those negatives. X to the 4/7 is the 7th root of x to the 4th. 4x to the 2/3. Okay, the only thing that 2/3 is with is x, because the 4 is not holding anything. For the 4 to be included, it would have to be written 4x in parentheses to the 2/3. That's the only way your 4 gets affected by the 2/3, but it's not written that way. So we have a 4 on the outside, then we have a cubed root of x squared. It's very important that you write what the root is and that you write it really small and so that it doesn't look like a coefficient out front. This time the 5x is all in parentheses, so it's all going to be under your root. So we've got the 6th root of 5x to the 1st. Both of these are the 7th root. We have x squared and we have y to the 5th. Remember that the numerators are going to stay as exponents. So now let's go back up and deal with these negatives. xyz to the negative 1/2. Well, a negative simply sends it to the bottom. And 1/2 is going to be the square root of xyz. Your 3 is in front. It's not in parentheses, so it's not part of the root. So you're going to have a 3 on top. The reason I know that it's going to be on the bottom for the other is that negative. And x to the negative 1/2 means the square root of x on the bottom. Negative sent it to the bottom. 1/2 made it square root of x. When you are multiplying, you add your exponents. So this actually becomes a to the 4/3 plus 5/3, which is going to be 9/3, which actually becomes a to the 3rd. Therefore, you don't have a root. Okay? If you wanted to write it as a root, it would be the cubed root of a to the 9th, but it would simplify. All of this is to the negative 4th. Before I worried about that, I would go ahead and say power to a power means multiply. And so this becomes x to the negative times the negative is a positive. 1/2 times 4 is 2. So that would be your answer there. It doesn't have a root either. So that's all of your notes. It takes you to your assignment. Remember that the denominator is your root and the numerator is your exponent. Remember, it all has to be in parentheses, okay, if you're going to leave it all under the root. If it's not in parentheses, anything not holding the exponent is going to be a coefficient. It's going to be out front. If you have questions, call me over.